For the better part of a century, one simple idea has completely shaped how we think about machine intelligence. It started as a sort of parlor game, but it became this huge philosophical challenge, a benchmark that, well, modern AI may have just completely shattered. So let's dive into the incredible story of the Turing test. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with Alan Turing's absolutely brilliant original idea, and, of course, the powerful arguments that popped up to challenge it right away. Then, we're going to meet some of the historical contenders who tried, and sometimes failed, to beat the game. That'll bring us right up to today, where AI it can pass the test. And that just raises the biggest question of all. What does it all mean now? What is the test's true legacy? It really does all start right here. This single question, posed way back in 1950 by the father of computer science himself, Alan Turing. This one question basically launched the entire field of artificial intelligence as we know it. But you know what's funny? What was Turing's own answer? Yeah, you heard that right. The guy who asked the most famous question in AI history pretty much immediately dismissed it. He knew that arguing over the definitions of words like machine and think was a total dead end. It would just lead to endless philosophical debates that go nowhere. He needed something more concrete. So what he did was this ingenious little sidestep. He completely replaced that big, unanswerable philosophical question with a practical, observable test that he called the imitation game. The goal was no longer to prove that a machine could think. No, the new goal was to see if a machine could imitate a human being so convincingly in a conversation that you just couldn't tell the difference. All right, so that brings us to the game itself, and, well, the very powerful critiques that have been chasing it around for decades. How did Turing's imitation game actually work? Now, here's something a lot of people miss. Turing originally laid it out as a two-stage game. First, you've got a human interviewer who's just typing to a man and a woman, trying to figure out who is who. Here's the kicker. The man's goal is to trick the interviewer. Only then, in stage 2, does a computer replace the man, and it inherits that exact same goal, deception. So, from the very beginning, trickery was baked right into the test's DNA. And that focus on trickery led to probably the most famous philosophical challenge of all time, John Searle's Chinese room argument. Okay, imagine a person, let's say me, in a locked room. I don't speak a word of Chinese, but I have this enormous rulebook. Questions in Chinese get slipped under the door. I use the book to look up the symbols and write down the correct responses, also in Chinese, and slip them back out. To someone outside, it looks like the room understands Chinese, right? But do I? No, not at all. Searle's point was that I'm just manipulating symbols, that's syntax, without any real understanding of what they mean, that's semantics. And a computer passing the Turing test, it might just be doing the exact same thing. This quote from AI researchers Stuart Russell and Peter Norvig just nails it. It perfectly illustrates what they call the deception fallacy. Think about it. We don't judge airplanes by how well they can fool pigeons into thinking they're also pigeons. We judge them on performance, lift, speed, how well they actually fly. For most serious AI researchers, the goal isn't to build a perfect human mimic. It's to build genuinely useful, intelligent systems. The test, they'd argue, is just a distraction. And beyond all the philosophy, the test is just kind of broken, practically speaking. For one, the outcome is totally subjective. It all depends on how clever or how easily fooled the judge is. And get this, in a lot of these tests, judges ironically misidentify the actual human as the machine. It's so common it even has a name, the Confederate effect. And maybe most importantly, a text-only test just ignores all these other huge parts of intelligence, like seeing the world or being creative. So despite all these flaws, the test became a legend, a benchmark everyone aimed for. But its history isn't really a story of growing intelligence. It's more a story of increasingly clever deception. The whole journey really kicks off back in 1966 with ELIZA. It was a super simple program that just mimicked a psychotherapist. Its own creator was totally shocked when people started forming real emotional bonds with it. Then, in '72, came Perry. It simulated a person with paranoia so well it actually fooled trained psychiatrists. And this all leads up to 2014, when a chatbot named Eugene Guzman made huge headlines by controversially claiming it had finally officially passed the Turing test. But here's the crucial thing to understand about these contenders. They weren't getting smarter in some general amazing way. They were just getting better at gaming the test. ELIZA used simple keyword matching tricks. Perry just adopted a very consistent but limited persona. And Eugene Gustman, its big trick was pretending to be a 13-year-old Ukrainian boy, which was a genius way to excuse any grammatical mistakes or gaps in its knowledge. Some people even called this strategy artificial stupidity, basically winning by lowering expectations. And that whole history of clever tricks and workarounds brings us right up to today. But the game has completely changed. Why? Because modern large language models have, for all intents and purposes, broken it. 73%. Just let that number sink in for a second. In a recent, very rigorous study from UC San Diego, that is how often the AI model GPT-4 was judged to be human in a formal Turing Test setup, 73% of the time. And if you look at this chart from that same study, it gets even crazier. Not only did GPT-4 score that amazing 73%, but that score was significantly higher than the rate at which the actual human participants were judged to be human. Let me say that again. The AI was perceived as being more human than the humans. So how on earth do they do it? What's the secret? Well, the key insight is that modern AIs win by mastering the performance of being human. They don't pass by being these flawless, super intelligent brains. They pass by being believably imperfect. They use humor, they make cultural references, they even pause or show hesitation. And that completely shifts the debate. The question isn't, can it think anymore? It's what are the consequences of perfect imitation? So, the test has been won. Game over. Now what? What does it all really mean? What is the real, lasting legacy of the Turing test? Here's the beautiful paradox of the whole thing. The Turing test's failure as a clean scientific benchmark is actually its greatest success. Its true value was never about being a finish line for AI to cross. No, its real value was as a philosophical catalyst. It's a question that forced us, for 75 years, to debate and argue and really sharpen our own ideas about what words like intelligence and thinking even mean. And that huge, decades-long debate has given rise to all these new, more sophisticated ways of evaluating AI that go way beyond simple imitation. You have things like the Lovelace test, which looks for genuine creativity, the Winograd schema, which tests for common sense reasoning, and of course, the field today is dominated by these massive, objective benchmarks that measure very specific skills. The field has moved on. So it's pretty clear, the imitation game is over. The philosophical question Turing dodged has now become an urgent, practical one. We're living in the world he imagined. And the most important question is no longer for scientists and philosophers, it's for all of us. What happens now that we can no longer tell the difference?